This is the third and final part of a three-part series on the net present value. So this is where we left in a previous video, where I showed you three different ways where you could find the net present value. And in this video, I want to talk about what some of the pitfalls are of using some of these different methods. And the first thing I want to talk about is this annuity formula that we use. And we just use the present value formula equals PV to get that one started off. And it gave us the exact same answer as the rest. And one reason why it gave us the exact same answer as the rest is because we had a consistent cash flow. We had some different cash flows at the beginning and the end, but it was really easy to account for those different cash flows by using the present value formula that you would use if you were calculating the present value of an annuity. And we also showed you how to do this by just making a table and adding up all the present values. And we also showed how the native net present value function in Excel works. And we showed you a couple of pitfalls. But the thing you have to remember is that it's very rare that you actually find some type of investment, some asset that you might buy that's got a consistent, constant cash flow. In reality, over here on this next tab that I've created, it's more than likely it's going to look something like this. You're going to end up with a scenario where you've got some inconsistent cash flow over time. So in this example, and I'll tell you what I was thinking. I was imagining what it would look like if you were establishing a crop of fruit trees or some other crop that pays off, I guess they call those perennial plants, that pays off year over year over year. You spend some money up front in time period 0, in year 0, at the before the first year begins, investing some amount of money in it. And the next year you've got to maintain the asset. And the asset, it may not pay you anything that year. So I just said, okay, it's going to cost you $5,000 to maintain the asset, $5,000 more than you got out of the asset that year. And then I just said, why don't we just imagine that slowly over time your returns start to go up. So you make $2,500 in the first year, you have an extra $5,000 in cash flow in the fourth year, and on and on until you get to year 10. And in year 10, you have to disassemble this asset. It's imagine you've got to cut down the trees so you can reestablish a new orchard, a new tree crop. And I'm sure you can come up with several scenarios where something like this might happen. I know people sometimes try to grow ginseng. It's very challenging to grow, and so you would have a similar scenario where you would have a high cost the first year and then very little revenue coming in, and then in the final year you'd harvest the ginseng, typically between year 4 and year 7, and you'd have revenue in those years, but there would be expenses too, and we'd have to see kind of how they balance out. But moving on to this example right here, what I want to do is show you how to use the table method, right, where you will sum the present values, and then use the Excel function. And I just wanted to show you this and let you know that you can't use the annuity formula. The annuity version of this won't work because the cash flows are not constant. Now, we did this in a previous video, so I'm going to go pretty quick because the concept is exactly the same. The only thing that's different is we don't have a constant recurring cash flow. We don't have an annuity. So I'm going to type equals PV to set up the present value function in Excel. I'm going to click on my 8% discount rate, and then I'm going to lock in that absolute cell reference by hitting an F4, type in comma, and then click on the number of periods. In this case, it's 0. Click on a comma and then a comma again so I can skip the payment argument. And then I've got to enter a negative sign, and I click a negative sign and then click on my $40,000 cash outflow hiding out in C4. I close the parentheses and I've discounted it, and of course it's gonna be the same number. Now, a quick word on the formatting. Red means negative, so is a parentheses. A red parentheses also means negative. Don't let the formatting confuse you too much. We have a negative number. We're just going to drag that down. I showed you how to do that in a previous video. And we end up with this stream of discounted cash flows. And for some reason, it keeps overriding the line that I put in earlier. So I'm just going to add that back in. Then I use the auto sum function. It's over here off camera. I'm going to have to move my screen view a little bit so you can see it there. So there's the auto sum function. It's in the upper right hand corner. And I just click on the auto sum. And when I do that, it just formats this for me, and I get this formula. And all I have to do at that point is just hit enter, and it will do that for me. So this asset has a net present value of $6,000, meaning I have this discount rate, this cost of capital, this target I have to hit of 8%. For whatever reason I have to hit 8%. This is just saying that I beat 8%. That's the way I think about it. And I beat that 8% by $6,000. Now the net present value Excel function, I type an equal sign and I type NPV and then open parentheses. I click on my rate, I type a comma, and I highlight all of my cash flows. Let go of the mouse after I highlight them all, close the parentheses, and I get a number. And okay, I get this really big negative number. I didn't get the same number both times. Well, that means that I've made a mistake. And sometimes I make mistakes and I leave them in the videos because I want to show you the mistakes. But sometimes I do the mistakes on purpose because I want to show you a common mistake that people make. Because what happens is people get in a hurry. Take a look at what I've done. I didn't highlight the cash flows. I highlighted the discounted cash flows and then I discounted them. I've basically double discounted everything, which threw my investment into a big hole, right? It shows that the investment's a bad investment because I used the method wrong. So what we can do, and it's so handy in Excel, I can just move my cursor to the edge of that red border that you see, anywhere in that red border, and the thick plus sign is going to change to this directional arrow thing. There's 4 arrows pointing, north, south, east, and west. And I click the left button on my mouse and I hold that and I drag it over, and the formula updates down here. If you notice, the formula updated, and now I'm pointing to the correct place, and I'm going to press enter and see what I get. Oh no, it's still wrong. What happened? Here's what happened. All right. This net present value function, it doesn't do a very good job of handling this year 0 cash flow. Excel thinks this is year 1 because it's the first one in your list. You have to be really careful because if you tell Excel to do the wrong thing, it will do the wrong thing. And sometimes you have to kind of outthink Microsoft Excel, right? So we're just going to move the cursor to the upper right-hand corner of cell C4, and I get this horizontal arrow cursor, right? I'm going to click the mouse button, hold that down, and drag down one cell and let go and press enter. And now I'll be discounting my cash flows correctly. But I still get the wrong number, right? Why? Because I need to go in and edit this cell, edit this formula by adding in my negative cash flow in year 0, and then I press enter. And now I get the same number. And as I said, as I said in the previous video, sometimes, especially when you're first learning how to do this, it's really worth your while to calculate this more than one way, because the net present value Excel function is actually the more efficient and more effective and more straightforward way to get this done, unless you don't know how to use it. And if you're not sure how to use it, you might want to think about trying a different method while you learn how to use it to kind of double check yourself. And hey, you know what? That's actually a really good strategy for just about any aspect of life. So, don't be afraid to take a little bit of extra time and a little bit of extra care finding more than one way to calculate something so that you can make sure you understand it. Because, my hope is that you're listening to this because one day you're going to be on the job and some boss is going to say, hey, find the net present value of this stream of income. And you're going to go, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Or maybe you'll say, I remember that old Dr.G, he made a video and made me watch it in my finance class. I wonder if it's still on YouTube. Well, I certainly hope that it will be on YouTube for a long time. I hear the music starting, which means I've got to stop rambling. Thank you so much for listening to my videos and listening to my rambles. As always, if you've got a better way of doing this, I'd like to hear about it. Tell me all about it. I'd like to hear from you in the comments. Hit that like button and subscribe. Thank you.